masks that we're making have between like a 50 to 69% effective ratio, and that's comparing it to a surgical mask that you would get from the medical supply chain. So it might make you feel safer. I think it does make people feel safer. It's kind of more of an emotional thing, but it's not guaranteed to keep you from catching COVID. So the best thing is to stay home and do your social distancing if you can. So I'm going to demonstrate today how to make a surgical style mask, which is primarily what the supply chain is requesting. So I have half a completed surgical mask, and then kind of the steps. After cutting, you do a 1/2 inch seam, and then you do what's called understitching to create a casing, and then you sew the bottom, and then you top stitch the bottom, then you base stitch and do your pleating, and then you add your binding. There's a long list of materials that you can use from home. You can use pillowcases, you can use dishcloths, you can use the filters from vacuum cleaner. These little notches are where your pleats are going to come together, and you transfer that onto the interfacing. I trace my pattern onto the interfacing first and then flat it with the fabric. So I'm just going to cut. And then you go ahead and you mark your notches. I typically sew about, well, anywhere from 9 to 36 at once. Like I just did an order over the weekend for a shelter that needed 50 masks, and so I did 36 at one time. So I cut 36, did all the cutting, and then sat down and did all the sewing in what's called piecework style. So it's the way that they sew in the factories. So I'm going to start at the top, take my interfacing and the exterior fabric, right sides together, and I'm going to sew it a 1/2 inch. And then I'm just going to lead the next one right into it. So this is what piecework is. And you don't stop and cut and backstitch every step of the way. Okay. So then I'm going to do the next step, which is called an understitching. And it makes a casing for the wire to fit through. The wire helps to have the mask fit along your face a little bit more secure, which is an important part of why you want to wear a mask. So the understitching, the seam gets pushed to the right, and then you're stitching through the interfacing and all the 2 layers of the seam. Now I'm going to sew the 1/4 inch at the bottom of the mask. Okay, so now what I'm doing is top stitching. So I did that 1/4 inch seam, and now I'm going through and top stitching. Okay, so now you have this nice little finished rectangle. Now I'm going to do some basting on either side. And then I'm going to pleat. So I don't need pins. You might need to pin. But basically where I had those little notches, and I'm using the interfacing markings, not the fabric markings, because the fabric ones shift more because the fabric is like looser, and I'm bringing them together. So notch to notch. I get 3 nice little pleats. They're about 3/4 of an inch deep. So I just sew it across there, so it's like this unfinished tie. And now I'm gonna fold it, the raw edge, and then fold it again on top of the mask, covering up once again my basting stitches. So I'm just folding the tie towards center and then folding it again. So now I'm pleating the other side, and I'm trying to make the pleats line up, which sometimes is a bit tricky. There we go. and I put the wire through. And I made this pattern off of a paper mask that I happen to have. So I use that as my pattern. But it's basically like a 6x7 rectangle that then gets pleated up with 3/4 inch pleats. It's pretty basic, and then that's the back side. So you would then just tie this around your head. And these are meant to be washed many, 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 many times. So it's like so. So if you don't have a sewing machine, there's some amazing videos online of people in China that just made masks out of like tissue paper and paper towels layered together and stapled with rubber bands. Face masks are going to be part of our fashion accessories now. I think our landscape is going to be more like it is in Asia. I've been sheltering in place for 22 days now, and when I started sheltering in place, I started to make a mask a day. It's inspired by this artwork that I saw in the 90s by an artist named Fred Tomaselli, who was making work about the AIDS epidemic. It took him more than a year, but it was an apple a day. He painted an apple a day, thinking about the apple a day keeps the doctor away, and if he would paint an apple a day, it might help his friends from dying. And so I started to make masks with these fat quarters that I actually have that were donated to the studio. It's really become kind of this archive of time, and right now I like to call this a mask a day keeps COVID away. One of the things that's really interesting to think about is, you know, the United States is this place of the individual, and we're being asked to consider our community. We're being asked to help protect each other, and so the masks are also a way of doing that, because if you are sick and you don't know it, it keeps your droplets contained.